ACES project and ESPA research project. And so, good, I can... Yeah, I will take it. And the project is searching the well, I will explain now but the what changes land use change produces on ecosystem services and well-being in the rural poors in Mozambique. So Mozambique is a very poor country, and even more there is more prevalence of poverty in the rural areas. It's quite a forested country, but it is also compounded with important ecological changes like high deforestation and degradation rates. So the main question of the ACES project is what are the impacts of woodland conversion and degradation, and how does this affect the rural poor of Mozambique? The project has 3 study areas in the south, in the middle, and in the north of Mozambique. And in each of the 3 case studies, we are studying between 7 and 10 villages along a land use change gradient, from more forested villages to less forested villages. This is a kind of space per time substitution. So we cannot, in a 3 years time project, we cannot evaluate big land use changes. So we are comparing villages highly forested with low forest cover. We are collecting data in a diverse type of approaches and methods, both in biophysical and social and economical data. I'm going to present the preliminary results we have from the first case study in the south. Here is Maputo in the south of Mozambique, and the study area is the Mopane district, and it's quite close to Mozambique. The main land use change in this area is charcoal production, and it's the main land use change there, but it's also important for the livelihoods of the people living there. After agriculture, which most of the families produce, charcoal is the second more spread activity between the villages. This is how it looks. The Mopane forest is one of the kinds of the forests of the Mopane district, which is quite a forested district, and the charcoal produced from Mopane trees is the best quality charcoal, the more valuable. So they are producing charcoal mainly in this kind of forest, not in all the forests they have. And this is one charcoal kiln done in the middle of the forest of one of the villages. And this is how it looks like, more or less, the forest after charcoal production. So it's in this area is more forest degradation than deforestation. This is in part because it's very dry. It has a very dry climate and a very poor quality soil, so the potential for agriculture is very low. So as difference from other parts and other countries, after making charcoal, the villagers do not do shifting cultivation, so they don't crop in these areas. They usually crop only in the river banks that are the most wet areas, so there's not been an agriculture land extension. We have, I'm going to present some results from the whole project, and then I will focus on my part. This is one of the results we have come to. We have studied the supply chain of charcoal, And we have identified two main value chains, one produced by locals and one produced by outsider operators. In the locals value chain, the population, the villagers produce charcoal and they sell it to a local transporter or a large-scale transporter. And in the outsider operator value chain, this operator contracts people for producing charcoal, usually from outside the villages, and they organize the transportation until the urban retailers. So they control most of the steps in the value chain. And this produces a difference when we compare the revenues that stays in the villages from the production of charcoal. If it's produced by the local producers, up to 45% of the revenues stays in the villages in different forms. But if it's done by the outsider operators, only around 8% of the production of the revenues stay in the villages. So this produces some kind of thinking when we are trying to think what benefit the villagers obtain from charcoal, if the degradation of the forest could benefit them a lot, then maybe could be a good reason for the degradation of the forest. But if most of the benefits are going out, then the benefits are not so high. Also, we have detected that the production of charcoal within the villagers is not equally distributed. So there are a small number of villagers that produce a lot of charcoal, and a large number of villagers that produce little quantity. And we are trying to analyze what are these consequences of the charcoal production for the well-being of the villagers. For this, we have conceptualized and construct a multidimensional well-being indicator based on the Alkire-Foster method for well-being aggregation. And I'm just, I see that you cannot read, so it's mainly, it has three different dimensions: human, social, and economic, and different indicators for each of them. We measure each indicator for each villager, actually for each household, that is the unit of analysis. And then we aggregate this so we can to a final indicator for a family if it's poor or non-poor. And then we can do different comparison and analysis. A good point of using this measure is that we can also analyze the individual indicators by themselves or with the aggregated value indicator. And now, after this, I'm going to present the main work I'm involved in. I'm in work package 1 and 5, and our main task is to collect the data and the results that other work packages are producing and integrate them into two holistic systems as a way to evaluate alternative interventions and as a way to improve the communication of the results to the stakeholders. So we are using scenarios of the future and Bayesian belief networks. Both tools can use qualitative and quantitative data, but the scenarios of the future have more a qualitative output, and the Bayesian belief networks that are probabilistic models have more a quantitative output. So this connects with some of the discussions from the previous sessions. So we are trying to model, we are not trying to model the future, how will be the future, but the consequences of different sets of interventions. So if we do these different interventions, what could be the alternative as a way to evaluate and give advice to to policymakers. We use the results from the scenarios of the future to conceptualize the BBN, the Bayesian belief networks, and we use a different set of data for the BBN and for the scenarios, but also we use geographical information systems as input data. So we use one of the input data is the current land cover map of the area, but the model also produces maps as an output, as a result. So we are creating land cover maps of the future and ecosystem services maps of the future. So they are not, we are not trying to obtain what will happen, but what could happen if different interventions are done. And we are doing this link with the quick scan software. So I'm going to explain very briefly the scenario approach we have followed. The first step was and afterwards I will explain briefly also some results. So the first step was the identification of the main drivers of land use change in Mozambique. For that we did a workshop with the stakeholders at national and provincial level. From this input, we constructed 3 alternative narratives of scenarios of the future, and we have evaluated them again with a second round of workshops. And then we are now, with the results from the last workshops, we are constructing a final version of the scenarios. And these are some images showing roughly how could the scenarios look like. So the scenario A would be driven by the support by the government to large investments, foreign or national investments, and low support to rural habitants. So their situation would remain quite similar. Even some of them would benefit from these large investments. In the scenario B, the government would give more effort to education and training, and the local society would organize better, would increase the organization, in part facilitated by the new technologies. So they would also protest and ask to the government for more policy-oriented, social and environmental oriented policies, so that this would again increase the education and training and, for example, extension services, and would claim also for efforts for local projects and for the promotion of local and like cooperatives or microcredits projects. So the situation in the rural areas would increase more than in scenario A. And scenario B would be a balance between A and C. So the government would still promote large investments, but also the education and environmental policies would increase, and the local society would have also a bigger voice. So these are the 3 scenarios. And then I'm going to explain the BBN method and results. We did a first draft of the BBN. Then we did workshops with the stakeholders to encourage them to construct causal diagram maps. So we asked them, well, we did workshop at 3 scales, at national, provincial, and local. We asked them for the most important components of well-being, for what ecosystem services are needed for compel these well-being components, what drivers of land use change are more important for those ecosystem services, and what interventions could improve the situation. We did these workshops at village level, and these are the outputs we get, and these are at provincial level. So with this, we analyze them, and we collect the most repeated variables in all the different workshops. and the most centrality variables, those that are linked to more variables. With this, we construct a first draft of the Bayesian network, or the causal diagram still, and then we adapt it to the data we have. So we from all the variables they have find as more important, we take those the ones that we can measure. Okay. And then we populate with data, and we plan to be able to evaluate the results with stakeholders. I don't know if you are lucky or not, but I couldn't put the software in that laptop. So I will going to show you some results with some screen that I took yesterday. So this is the result in BBN that we have. We have a set of different interventions. For example, for the Mabalana case study, one intervention is to adapt charcoal licensing process to communities, because actually a little number of communities are producing charcoal through associations, and it's because of the difficult process to obtain a license. So if this process would be facilitated for the villagers, more charcoal production could be within the legal framework. Then we have also some outsider drivers of change that we cannot control, or the government cannot control. For example, charcoal demand from urban areas that depend on the population growth and other more complex issues. We have a set of variables dealing with land use change, land cover. So the interventions and the outsider drivers of change will change the land cover in the future. That land cover change will change the availability of ecosystem services, of different ecosystem services like firewood, wild animals for food or grazing. And then there are some access processes and barriers that will control how from this availability of ecosystem services, how that affects the well-being of the population. So I'm going to try to show you how it works. There you cannot see anything, so I put three a little bigger. So here we have the current land cover proportions of the area. So 34% of the land is Mopane woodland currently. Under scenario A, that I explained before, we have translated it to the BBN as if there is a high urban demand of charcoal, and if none of the proposed intervention is done, then the Mopane woodland would decrease to 2% of the area. So almost all Mopane woodland would would disappear, or would be degraded. And then how this affects, for example, one of the ecosystem services, firewood availability. In the 70% of the area would be a low availability for firewood, because a lot of Mopane woodland has disappeared. In a scenario B, the Mopane woodland would remain 24%. So scenario B is the more locally focused or rural development focused. So all the proposed interventions are done, and also there is a lower urban demand of charcoal, but still some production is done. So the Mopane woodlands would diminish from 34 to 24% of the area, and the firewood availability would be low in 62 of the area. So there is a bigger change from here is, in this scenario A, would be only 2% of Mopane and 70% of availability. With the 24 Mopane, so with a lot of more Mopane, the change in availability is not so big. This is because there are also other forests that are not affected by charcoal that could be used still for firewood availability by villagers. I wanted to show you also other functionalities of the software, so we can compare also what are the consequences for the different type of families. So for the consequence for the poorest would be different than from the poor and from the better off. And also these are examples of the map that we can get. So this is the current land use map. This is the map, the land use map for scenario A, and this is for scenario B. And this, from those maps, we can derive the future ecosystem services availability maps.
So what I'm going to do is allow Con to talk now, because I think that with the web streaming, the timing seems to be pretty important, right? That we stay on time, or not? Isn't it that crucial? I'm not sure. So one quick question, and then we could also have a longer discussion at the end as well.
Roy Marsh, I spend some of the, can you hear me? Yeah. I spend some of the year in Mozambique, and one of the features of being there is these massively overloaded lorries of charcoal going from the north down to Maputo. I've always thought it was an inherently unsustainable situation. But my question really is, what are the terms of reference for this? Are they to devise ways of having a more equitable distribution of income from the existing sort of business as usual charcoal production, or ways of being aware of the inherent unsustainability of it and saying, well, what can we do with the communities instead of charcoal, because there are very few options?
Yeah, so the objectives would be to increase to check what's the real consequence for the villagers, if they increase their well-being or not, because it could be the case that it doesn't increase so much. But so the interventions would try to increase the benefit the locals obtain from charcoal, and also trying to do it more in a sustainable way. Yeah. For example, other objective would be to trying to do it in the more inside the legal framework and not so in the illegal. But yeah, would be to trying to do it in a sustainable way also for the forest.
Okay, next up is Con.